Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, from the first canto, chapter 13, entitled Dhritarashtra Song, text 49. So Yamaja Maharaja, Bhagavan Bhutta Bhavana, Kala Rupa Vatirna Syam, Abhavaya Suradvisam, Saha, that Supreme Lord, I am the Lord Sri Krishna, Adya, at present, Maharaja, O King, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Bhutta Bhavana, the Creator, or the Father of everything created. Kala Rupa, in the disguise of all devouring time. Avatirna, descended. Asyam, upon the world. Abhavaya, for eliminating. Suradrisham, those who are against the will of the Lord. Translation. That Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, in the guise of all devouring time, Kala Rupa, has now descended on earth to eliminate the envious of the world. Purport. There are two classes of human beings, namely the envious and the obedient. Since the Supreme Lord is one and the Father of all living beings, the envious living beings are also His sons. But they are known as the Asuras. But the living beings who are obedient to the Supreme Father are called Devatas or demigods, because they are not contaminated by the material conception of life. Not only are the Asuras envious of the Lord and even denying the existence of the Lord, but they are also envious of all other living beings. The predominance of Asuras in the world is occasionally rectified by the Lord when He eliminates them from the world and establishes a rule of Devatas like the Pandavas. His designation as Kala in disguise is significant. He's not at all dangerous, but he's the transcendental form of eternity, knowledge and bliss. For the devotees, his factual form is disclosed, and for the non-devotees he appears like Kala Rupa, which is causal form. This causal form of the Lord is not at all pleasing to the Asuras, and therefore they think of the Lord as formless, in order to feel secure that they will not be vanquished by the Lord. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. In the Bhagavad-gita, Lord Krishna is also described as Kalosmi Lokaksaya Krit, which means I am time, the destroyer of all worlds. So, Srila Prabhupada in the purports mentions Krishna is not at all dangerous, because that sounds intense, the destroyer of all worlds. But Srila Prabhupada then emphasizes Krishna's nature of Satchidanand, his eternal nature. And that, of course, is the perspective. The material world is anyway temporary, and as such, illusory. Although whatever exists in this material world is factual, nothing remains. Therefore, our relationships with all the various objects in this world also are not remaining. And in that sense, not important. But due to ignorance, due to avidya, we have become covered and we give too much importance to the material world. The Chaitanya Charitamrita, the introduction of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is based on 5 lectures which Srila Prabhupada gave. And there it is stated that spiritual life is just like ascending in a plane. As we're going up, everything below begins to look small. So in the same way as we're going up in spiritual life, all these material things, they look less significant. Not that they are not required, but we cannot take it all so serious anymore. For the materialist, that this is all there is. But when Prabhupada was speaking in Moscow with Professor Kotovsky, Prabhupada raised the point that, do you really think, do you really believe that this one little life is everything, and that one has to really do it all, find fulfillment in that one little life? I mean, you really think that's going to work? Such a short little life, and so many desires, really, and it's already not working. It already sort of didn't quite work out. So start off on a bad footing, and now what will come next? Right? Are we ever going to make it this life? Probably not. So, but for a devotee, this is not at all depressing. When we speak too much about death and about the nature of time destroying everything, then people sometimes have such a depressed worldview, right? So negative, right? So pessimistic. I mean, don't you see the world is beautiful? That there are many wonderful things here, and you're so negative, about everything. Temporary. Look, the beauty of nature. It's like a wonderful work of art, and we are just appreciating. We're living life to the fullest, and I'm just the scents, the forms, the shapes, the beauty of this world. Are you afraid to live? What went wrong in your life? That you had to take shelter of some movement that has a philosophy that everything is just temporary and breaking down and not important, Why are you punishing yourself so much, young man? Enjoy the beauty of youth. One can argue in that way, and that would be the material case, right? And yes, we are, Vaishnavas have a combination of an optimistic and a pessimistic worldview. Materially pessimistic. It's not gonna work. It's whatever can go wrong will go wrong. It's certainly, and even if there is success, it's all gonna break down. Right? Gloom and doom, basically. But at the same time, spiritually, very optimistic. Very optimistic. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are the famous verses of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who says, in the first verse, I'm lower than a worm in stool. So, in the second verse, he says, anyone who comes in contact with me, he will lose all his good qualities. So one might think, in modern times, you would think, would he need some counseling, maybe? You know, I mean, what's going on, you know? This is a typical case of extreme low self-esteem. Extreme, really. I mean, it's like pathological, you know. I mean, yeah, look at it. Lower than a worm in stool, come on, you know, you're not that bad. You know? Anybody who comes in contact with me will lose all his good qualities. I mean, this is like ultimately, utterly depressing, you know, and that's your book, my God. I mean, but people oftentimes focus on the first two verses and they miss the third one, which actually makes all the difference, because the third verse says, then how amazing it is that I have attained the mercy of Lord Nityananda. Oh, yes, that changes everything. Yes, I'm a loser, but I got the mercy of Lord Nityananda. Yes, you know, yes, life is hopeless, but I got the mercy of Lord Nityananda. Right? Yes, I'm lower than a worm in stool, right? You know, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu praying to be an atom at the lotus feet of the Lord. Again, an atom, come on, you know. Can't you just ask for something a little more than an atom? It's okay. An atom at the lotus feet of the Lord is glorious. Oh yes, that is a wonderful existence. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, yes, if I have to take another birth, that's all right. Even if I have to take birth as an insect, that's okay, but let it be in the house of a Vaishnava. And so the little insects in the houses of the Vaishnavas are sharing in the mercy, and who knows what piety there is in these insects to be in a Vaishnava's home. These are not ordinary insects at all. They have some pious credits. In Vrindavan we see the animals are great devotees. Great devotees. I've seen so many amazing things in Vrindavan with animals. For example, for some time we used to take prasadam in the temple. Gave the prasadam room to the Gurukul, and we take prasadam in the temple, but the cooking was in the Gurukul building, so they carried the buckets from the Gurukul to the temple. And as they would walk with the buckets, the birds would just swoop down. They swoop down and just like steal something from that bucket. An eagerness, you know, it's like beyond mundane hunger or appetite, you know. I mean, this was attachment to prasadam, right? That's the point. See, such eagerness only comes from transcendental taste. So even the birds, they want the prasadam. And then talking about that, of course, for animals, it's usually prasadam. That's the main connection. But in Vrindavan, in the Krishna Balaram Mandir, in the courtyard, there is a tree, a tamal tree. And a net has been made over the courtyard to keep the pigeons out and the monkeys out and all these things. But the tree was growing through the net and created a hole that you couldn't really see. But one monkey knew it well. So we're serving prasadam and it's just sort of coming to the end. The devotees start leaving. And rows, mats, leaf plates, clay cups, And suddenly this monkey comes down through the hole, sits down on the mat in front of an empty plate. So what to do? So I was in charge, so I said like, well, serve prasadam. Serve prasadam, And the monkey peacefully was eating there nicely, even with the right hand, right? Nicely. And, after just got up and left. And you go, who was this monkey? Who was this? Who was this personality? What Vaishnava was now somehow or other trapped in the existence of a monkey? There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So, even in the animal species, there are devotees. I have greatly enjoyed Satsvarup Maharaj's books about Chota, the mouse, and the whole thing. It's very interesting. I don't know if you ever read it, but I recommend it because he describes how all these mice have become devotees. They even have their own spiritual institution, which looks a bit like ISKCON and so on. So the book's interesting. Nimai the mouse and Chota. Yes, Krishna consciousness extends in all directions. It is touching the living beings, it is touching the plants, it is, the mercy is being distributed to all living beings. And of course, animals may not get a philosophical understanding. They may not actually understand the Satsidanand nature of the Lord, as we can look upon the world and see that this is a temporary manifestation of the Lord's energy, and that everything is resting on Brahman, and that behind whatever we see there is the eternal aspect, and thus we can become purified. Janmanam jayate Sudra, by birth everyone is a Sudra. Then sanskarat bhavet dvija, by sanskara we can become twice born. Veda bhavet vipra, by the following the path of the Vedas one can become a Brahmana who follows the external ritual of the Vedas, such as Karmakanda, Vipra, and finally Brahman Janatiti Brahman. That's how it was. The Brahmana, finally, he knows Brahman. So that's a Brahmana. A Brahmana is one who sees that Brahman nature. The Brahma Gayatri is basically about that, to remind the chanter 3 times a day that behind everything there is Brahman, which is, Brahma Gayatri is one of the Gayatri mantras that Vaishnavas also chant and that Brahmanas chant. So the Brahmana is remembering how behind everything there is Brahman. And in this way, time. What is the problem of time? In the tarot cards, there is one card which shows the young person looking forward and the old person looking backward. And it's very interesting. That is a fact. When you're young, oh yes, the future, dreaming up a whole life and thinking so many things. Then in old age, no more future. Now looking back and living on memories. Yes, Grandma, yes. Yes, we know that story, Grandma. You've only told it, 1,000 times. No, it's a good one, tell it again. Because what else is left? Nothing else is left. But not for the Vaishnava. Because the Vaishnava is even in old age looking forward. Being in Vrindavan, our second home is Jaipur. And everyone goes to Jaipur. It's all Bhagavatas Raya Prabhu's fault, for sitting there. He brings back all these memories now. Yeah, what can I do? So Jaipur. Okay, so we're in Jaipur. And of course, I used to buy marble in Rajasthan. So many times I went there. So I got to know the people personally a bit, who were there. So there were these two men who would, the deity, the altar would be locked, and it would be the biggest padlock in the universe, an enormous padlock, a huge thing. Then you see two men coming forward. One is carrying the key, the other one is walking next to him. The one who's carrying the key is the assistant. So when they get to the lock, the other one takes the key from him and opens the lock and open the doors. Then, okay. Meanwhile, there is a lecture going on. And the lecture is always the same lecture, and there's two pandits. The old one is always giving the same lecture. I can even do it. Is Jambut Vit mein Sansara Sagar mein Janma Mrityu chal raha hai. Right? Which I can translate for you. That here on this island of Jambudvip, we are in the ocean of birth and death, and where the cycle of, or the ocean of samsara, where the cycle of birth and death is always going on. So in this way, he gave this lecture. Then behind him there was one man who would make gestures, and in these gestures, the gestures were sort of funny gestures, So when I saw him first, I thought, oh well, every temple has one. But then, after a while, I realized that he was actually making the gesture when the speaker was making an important point. So, he was basically waking up the sleepers. So it was very interesting to study all this. And then, oh yes, the arti begins, right? Okay, pujaris grow conscious and start offering the arti, and they really have a big lamp and raise it high, and then finally it comes to the point of throwing the water at the audience, and it's, come to the altar to the front. There's two pujaris. One has like a big a lotus or a conch, or a lotus or a conch, I don't remember, filled with water, and the other one throws water. And I tell you, it's, bring your umbrella, it's buckets. It's not 3 drops, it's just like drenched, and it throws so much water, and they keep on refilling it. And the people, they are there, a lot of old people actually. There's these old men, they come to the temple and they do the kirtan, and that kirtan is something like Govinda, 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 Govinda. It is like, it is.
And you're out of time.
Yeah, and they're banging these big wampus, and it's really like, but I tell you, these old men are fired up, right? And then as they throw the water, all the people open their mouths, trying to catch the water. Then at the side of the altar, some tulsi is being distributed. Everyone runs that side, and there's like pounds on each other, hands trying to grab that tulsi. Someone buys Mahaprasadam, and instead of running away with it, stands there nicely and distributes it all. And you get a little of the Maha, you walk around the altar, you got your tulsi leaves, and you walk in, and there is the painting of Gaur Nitai, right, on the side of the altar.
And we're reminded that these are Rupa Goswami's deities. And what can you say in that transcendental place and with these transcendental people? They're old people. They're old people, but they are beautiful old people because they are full of eagerness. It's not like life is over. Oh no. Their life, rather they have matured now. Rather their determination has grown now. They have become deeper over time. They have become now, like focused. Vyavasyatmika buddhir. No longer bahusake inantascha, no longer intelligence here, intelligence there. Do I want this? Do I want that? I don't know. And it's like I'm trying, and crying at the same time. And to be a devotee, struggle, difficult, but really want to be. No, it's all over. It's all over. Now they just want Krishna, and they're so eager. If you're quick, after the arti, you see all the people leave, and if you follow them and you walk at a high pace, we go through a back lane and just a gate, and then we come to the Radha Gopinath temple, and there are old ladies, right? And these old ladies, they're old, their chins and noses are almost grown together. That's how old they are. But they are like doing this kirtan, and they're dancing and chanting. And it's not hard to see. It's not hard to see that just only a short time is separating them from being young and beautiful gopis in the spiritual world. There's no doubt about that. You can so easily see. So this is the wonderful thing, how old age is totally different in Krishna consciousness, how actually it is an opulence, how it is wonderful. The body, yes, it rattles a bit here and there, and have to crank it up in the morning, but these are small things, right? Who cares about that? It's just that focus on Krishna, and the eagerness is now just no longer, not all that distraction, not all that confusion of what to do with my life. Yeah, it's clear what to do with my life. What else to do with my life but worship Krishna? What else is there? All these other things, forget it, Love, forget that, Been there, done that, forget that. Just Krishna. Just Krishna. So how nice, actually, it is to grow old. So what are we worried? Time, I am destroyer, of all things. Who worries about time when he has the mercy of Lord Nityananda? Who worries about time? No problem at all. That time to us is actually time well spent, because it is all the devotional service that accumulates. Yes, that was somehow or other, whether we were serious or not, we were in the association of devotees, right? Whether we were not fully committed or not, whether we had some false ego or not, whether the mode of passion was sometimes taking us, overcoming us and carrying us away, whether all these things were going, still around us was an ocean of transcendence. All that Bhagavatam that we heard over the years, something of it stuck. So many nice lectures, so many Vaishnavas that came, the service we did, so much association. In 1984, we were installing the deity of Srila Prabhupada in the Samadhi. And because it was a huge international event, and the Samadhi is small in Vrindavan, there's just no place for all the devotees. So we decided we'll do the Abhishek in the temple, in the courtyard, and then later some strong men will carry Prabhupada, the deity, to the Samadhi, and then we place him there on his Vyasasana. So this was going on, and they had built a table for the bathing and so on, and it was all calculated on a drum, and they measured exactly this drum fits under this table. But one thing they had forgotten, there were bars at the bottom of the legs of the table to make it strong. the drum didn't fit. The whole GBC stood there. They had a whole meeting about what to do, and they didn't know what to do. I volunteered. I said, I'll go under there with a team of men with buckets, and I'll catch it. They said, with buckets? I said, well, last minute, what else are you gonna do, right? We went with buckets. It was one of the best experiences of my life. I got kicked by all the sannyasis, Brahmana stood on my hand, but that was good. But the best part was that whatever Abhishek Prabhupada got, I got it after. I still remember the honey as it was coming down. Full Abhishek in honey. It was intense. It was just, and then all that Yamuna water, my God, it was a huge quantity of Yamuna water. I was freezing under that table, but it was good. Yeah, that was special. So, in this way, what can we say? The mercy just comes, right? Somehow or other. And if we have some eagerness to serve, all kinds of mercy comes our way. And that, well, to our eternal credit. So, even if we go down memory lane, even that's transcendental. And when we go forward, that is also transcendental. And the mundane memories, they're so far away now. Like when people say that I'm from Holland, in my mind, I think, from Holland? That was in my last life. I'm not from Holland, I'm from Vrindavan. Right? I took birth in Vrindavan. What do you mean, Holland, Yeah, in that last life I was there, but no, I'm from Vrindavan. That is actually how wonderful this movement is. It can transform everything. I mean, Holland is like, in the world, it is known in French or as Pays-Bas, in Spanish as Países Bajos, and we call it the Netherlands, which basically means the lowlands, right? And I tell you, it's low, it's below sea level. In the city hall in Amsterdam, there's a glass tube, and it's connected to the sea. And when you're in the building, you can see the water is about 3 meters above the ground. And when it's high tide, it can go up to 6. So you're looking, interesting. It's low. But it's not only low in a geographical sense, it's also low life. Amsterdam has a reputation, and it's trying to keep that reputation. Very much so.
They're doing well keeping
it. Yeah, they're very eager to keep it.
And they're doing well.
They are certainly. So what to say? But all that's now pushed away by this movement. So time is a great blessing. Great blessing. It destroys all material things. Yes, let them be destroyed. And meanwhile, we accrue more and more natural Krishna consciousness. So yes, let's grow old in Krishna consciousness. No problem. Sure. Gray hairs, great. Some wisdom can be useful. Yeah, need it. So in this way, we are not looking as time as the destroyer. We are looking actually as time bringing us more and more blessings. All right. I'll end with that. Any questions, any comments?
Maharaj, as you said that time will destroy every material thing. But here we see that everyone is busy in accumulating material things. Like sometimes mother and father has to go out to maintain their daily things, and baby has to go in the daycare or with his grandchild. So being a devotee or being a grahastha, I'm very worried about that. How?
Yeah, we do a few material things, like I've got a nice shining water bottle. But then, those things we do, we need to do. We need to brush our teeth, we need a blanket, we need a house, we need to eat, we need to do all these things. But taking care of the body, it's not so important. It's not like, these things are not really like the big thing in our life. Krishna first comes into our life more and more, and it just increases and increases, and Krishna becomes more and more important. So then, all these other things are just the secondary things. So like that. Yes, we drop off the kids. Yes, we just, we get some money. Yes, we clean the house. Yes, cook something. Prabhupada went to the dentist, right? And the dentist said, oh, there are food remnants between his teeth. And Prabhupada said, no, that is prasada. That's just a completely transcendental vision. And that will happen to us also. We'll start to see, everything transcendental. So these material things, yes, we still go to the dentist sometimes. Or I just came from the dentist in Bombay.
Maharaj, in regards to Abhishek, I always found it a strange thing to kind of understand how that would have taken place in like a life form. And I remember watching all the black and white Nimai of Nadia, and they're like doing Abhishek of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it just looked like such a really uncomfortable situation. It's like you've got yogurt going and all these liquids. I mean, how did it actually work? I mean, is there a more transcendental vision you could impart to see that? Because it just seems kind of uncomfortable.
Yes, of course, in the material world there is some discomfort. If you have a material body and you get liters, 50 liters of this and 50 liters of that, that's a bit uncomfortable, it's true. But of course the deity is transcendental, and then the yogurt is also transcendental, so then there's not like this problem of getting wet and cold, right? So we project our mundane experience, sensual experience of like, oh my God, you're not going to throw a lot of water over me. Right? So looking now at the rain, well, it's coming down today. We don't want to get too wet because of our material bodies. But the Abhishek is a fully transcendental activity. Therefore, on the occasion of the spiritual masters, Vyasa Puja, we may offer some food bathing, right? Which is quite a sensation when they pour the honey over your feet, but not a full body one. That we preserve for the deity, because one has to have a transcendental body to appreciate that. And in the spiritual world, these things are just bliss, because they're just liquid bhakti. It's like the honey is the sweet liquid bhakti. The yogurt is the rich, creamy essence of bhakti. Like that, the milk is just the liquid of love, which is used for bathing. Like that, all the ingredients are just very blissful. But if you look at it from the material perspective, you hear like the cowherd boys and cowherd ladies get together and dress up in their best clothes and start throwing yogurt and butter around, Like, my clothes, oh my God. They just threw a whole bunch of yogurt on my clothes. I mean, are you out of your mind? dress is not proper. But we see that they do it. Yeah? So it's a little different over there. It's all blissful. Bhagavad-gita.
Mary, I just had a couple of minutes, a couple of reflections on
Please.
things you said. The one about death and temporariness, life in the soil. My experience is in preaching, look for those people who are really concerned about these things. Like you were saying, how people are denying, death denying. But I find that people, most of the devotees that I've ever met, or people I've preached to have become devotees, they're really concerned about death. What is this death business? Is it for the moment we live and that's it? So they really want to know something because they cannot accept death. They know it's inevitable, but they can't accept that it's the end. Or that if it is, what kind of ridiculous situation is this?
Mm.
That's one point.
Good point.
And just a couple of, one about Vrindavan, the monkey was a lovely story. When I first went there in 75, we were very remote then. People were saying to Prabhupada, why have you built this temple so far out?
Yeah.
But now we see it's the center of another city, actually.
Yeah.
Huge development around. But it was like empty fields everywhere. And there was a couple of ashrams down the back where there was some of these old brothers you're talking about, just all day long. People hanging out of time counters, but just into it. And there was an old dog, an old asthmatic, arthritic dog that used to live down the back. And we used to call him Dogwood. And every morning the dog would, he had rickety old legs, he'd stagger up and he'd sit down by the side gate of the temple and he'd sit there all day, and anyone who came or anyone who went out of that gate, he'd offer his obeisance. He'd stretch out like this and he'd look up and people would pat him on the head all day long. And then at night he'd stagger off back down. And one day he wasn't there anymore. Everyone was very upset. That was another, and the reflection on Jaipur. One thing you didn't mention was that in the streets before Mangalati, people are running, running through the streets to get there in time to see Govinda. Yeah. And also, you didn't mention the langur monkeys.
Okay,
when you're giving out the prasadam, you turn around and there's a monkey sitting there like this, wanting his prasadam. Big monkeys like this, very big. And I was just recently with Vishwadevi in England. She's old Pujari from Vrindavan, Bombay. So she also, over the years, spent a lot of time going in and out of Jaipur. And she came across a book written by an academic about the history of Govinda in Jaipur. And actually, the whole pink city, from the palace of the, because like Govinda's temple's in the palace grounds, where the king would get up every morning out of his bedroom from his balcony. He'd have darshan of Govinda across the garden. And this book relates that actually from the temple out, the whole walled pink city of Jaipur was built for Govinda. And if you actually look at the planning of it, where the palace is, where Govinda's temple is actually the center of the city. And then everything rotates around it, the Brahminical section, the Vaishya section, the Kshatriya section, the Shudra section, are built into that city, all in the service of Govinda. Like this one last little reflection about the question Bhartaji asked about how we also need to see it's a sign of the times of the progress of Kali Yuga, rapid progress of Kali Yuga in our lifetimes, that first of all husband and wife have to go out to work. I was born in 1950 in Australia, and my father used to make about £140 a month profit out of his business. He built a building for his business. He built a house. He furnished the house. We had a car, radio, television. It all came. And my mother never had to go out to work. And he said, my sister and I through school. So you see, just like us 50s and 60s to now, you see how it's changed. You just have to run faster and faster and faster to stop from going backwards. And therefore, as devotees, we really need to see the need to simplify our lives, because it's only getting worse. And the crazy demands that are there, there was no child market, teen market, all of this stuff in the 50s and 60s. But this is all a manifestation of Kali's influence. And in the course of it, he's breaking the family. He's breaking the family. So really, if we want to be devotees, we have to get really serious about simplifying our lives. And even in this Western world, that's a very difficult proposition. And again, like going back to Vrindavan in 1975, couple of sets of cloth, you have your bath, get a little prasadam, and life is very simple. So please take note that we're in very drastic times, and we have to be very alert to what's going on. Otherwise, swept away. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. All very relevant points. Last night we also had a long discussion on this simpler living and the entanglement of modern society, and how so this is true, and that's what Srila Prabhupada initially envisioned. That's why he wanted to create communities where devotees could live. Prabhupada started so many communities, but the devotees, all of us, didn't have the maturity to provide the leadership and the care for these communities to carry on a basis of trust and so on. Because Prabhupada wanted to create a whole different alternative society where people could live very nicely and peacefully in Krishna consciousness. Right? But because of poor leadership from our side, these communities, most of them didn't thrive. Australia is not doing bad with New Govardhan, which is, has survived and attracts a lot of people. But around the world, a lot of the communities are like really in a sleepy state and handful of people. And really, maybe that's the future of Brisbane. Have a community of devotees. So that even if you have to give your kids to be cared for, that they're cared for by devotees.
Yeah.
That would already be something. Yeah. I mean, that's how we really solve these problems. When we should get together, somehow or other, devotees should start to live together, start to do things together. That will give us the strength. As a community, we can deal with these things.
We can see, therefore, how powerful. I mean, this is my experience in this lifetime. That the 20th century, what is called the 20th century, was the big work of Kali. Even this is through this capitalization of the planet, the breaking of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And on the left side, the communism, that also breaks the family.
Yeah.
The real insidious work of Kali in the 20th century is to break the family apart. And in the extended family concept, the whole concept of community is maintained. And like we talked about, again, coming back to Prabhupada, he always said, and ISKCON is a family first. Like that very, very important point that Srinivada Maharaj made the other night in his talk was that when he took sannyas, Prabhupada told him, do not present Krishna consciousness as rules and regulations. Present it as family life, spiritual family life, and the very extended concept of family. There's the little gotras, the little unit families, but they're part of a big network.
Yeah.
And why I say the 20th century is the century that Kali's done this work is because religious communities in past centuries were and still are communities, because they were able to establish themselves in that way before all of this nonsense that we're dealing with came about. Trying to establish what we're trying to establish in the midst of this crass materialism is such a difficult task. But it is possible. And the other point is Prabhupada's disciples. Yes, Maharaj is right. There was immaturity and misunderstanding and inability to do a lot of things. But we shouldn't say therefore that it's all failed, because the next generation and the next generation and the next generation, you have to refine this. It's a multi-generational process. That's the other thing about big organizations, don't just happen.
Right. Anyway, I like your point that it didn't fail, because we shouldn't just write it off and say, oh well, these communities didn't work, it's outdated. Prabhupada tried it, but it was an experiment and it just didn't work. No, it was just maybe a bit ahead of its time in a sense, that the people weren't ready for it. But now we should try again. We should drift towards community living, and we'll be much happier, much happier.
It also makes good economic sense. Keep the money in the community. You know, like you say, people need to have childcare, so pay a devotee to do it, rather than pay somebody who's going to just spend the money on sense gratification.
You know, as I was a few years ago was involved in Mayapur, in the master planning of Mayapur, and in the course of it, I came across one book called Sacred Economy from Charles Eisenstein, right? And it's a very interesting book. It's easy to remember, Eisenstein, you know, or Stein, whatever you want to call it, Eisenstein.
Spiritual economy.
Sacred Economy. Sacred Economy. And he has a website, a nice little video clip of 12 minutes on that website, which explains the whole thing. And the whole basis of it is that instead of an economy where everyone is charging each other, right, it is all an economy based on giving, and everyone gives, and it creates goodwill. So, you come, and I receive you so nicely that you feel really touched, right? And therefore, you know, you reciprocate. And that is the foundation of Lord Chaitanya's movement. Somehow or other, he has, since he's an economist, he has expressed it really nicely in economic terms. But he identified the economy of the Vaishnava community, which is based on creating goodwill, which is based on giving. Look at what the Sunday love feast was that Prabhupada started. When Prabhupada did his Sunday feast, there wasn't like, okay, sabji, some puri, little halva, and some rice, you know, Sunday feast. No, it's just like incredible feast, incredible preparations. Each one was special, 15 preparations. I mean, it was like something, and you could just eat as much as you wanted, and you could even, then they'd say, you want to take some home? Yeah, you could live the whole week on the Sunday feast, at least till Thursday, you know.
Yeah.
By Friday, it would get a little tough, but then Saturday, you knew tomorrow is the Sunday feast. It would keep people alive, right? And that created such a mood of indebtedness, right? So this is how our community should be. Everyone gives, and then everyone wants to help each other, instead of everyone is, you know, we're sharing the cost and how much are you gonna pay and how much are you gonna pay and like, you know, I mean, and how are we gonna get the money for all this, you know what I mean? No, when the goodwill is created, yeah, everyone will give, and those who have a little extra will pull it out of their pocket, whereas now when we push everyone, you know, everyone must take a share. It's like, well, you know, yeah, I'll give my share, but you don't know what I got in my pocket. I'll hide it. Because it's like a approach. Everyone being pushed. Pay, pay, pay. I don't want to pay. So it's also a spiritual economy that is needed. It's a very interesting, sacred economy. Charles Eisenstein can have a look at.
It's kind of that thing about, if not us, who? If not now.
Yeah.
It's got to start to happen.
Yeah.
We have to start. Something has to happen.
Yeah.
Because, like what you were describing, is what's going on out there, and we don't want it in here.
Yeah. If as long as we are living by the culture of the outside world, and try to be devotees like that, we'll struggle. And when we are actually developing our own culture, that's when we start to flourish, and that's when we start to feel like relief. That's why Vrindavan is so nice, because that spiritual culture is so all-pervading. And then here in Australia, you're back in the old rut, right? The old routine of dropping the kids off in the morning in the daycare and running here and running there and working this and that. It's like, you know, Prabhupada said 6 hours of work is enough, right? For your living.
18 nowadays.
Yeah, crazy. Crazy.
But, and it works. So this economy works. In the 90s, I studied homeopathy, and one of my teachers was he was a Brahmana, Mr. Shaman, Dr. Shaman, and he was an old man at that time, almost semi-retired. He used to just come and teach, and he lived his whole life as a Brahmin. He practiced homeopathy, but he had a donation box as you went out of his room. And people would say, how much is it? He said, what it's worth to you. Anyway, we was it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, same. Thank you all very much. And enough food for thought now. Now after all the reflections, we can move on to the next part of the day. Thank you very much. Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam, Ki Jai.
His Holiness Kadamba Kanana Swami is here.
Oops.